And the magic internet machine has done its thing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome to episode 20, huh? We made it. 20.
Yeah,
Quite a
20.
milestone. Yeah, not bad, huh?
Yeah,
pretty good.
I don't know. I don't know a
I don't
Latin
think
word
there's
for
a
20,
20.
so
Yeah,
I was gonna
it's like-
I was gonna try to use that, but I don't know.
It's got to be like paper
public.
or
I went to
something.
public school. I don't know.
Yeah, public and parochial.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott and I, Mike, you'll appreciate this. We're waxing nostalgic about watching the school closings and like going through it.
No, not watching, listening. When they used to do it on the AM radio, and they'd be like, Hebron public schools are closed.
Yeah.
And I would pay a lot of money, Mike, just for one recording of one of those, just so I could have a little time warp moment. I'd sit in my kitchen, eat some brown sugar oatmeal, and play that or something. Just transport me back like 35 years or something.
Yeah,
but
dude,
it doesn't exist.
I remember because I was in the city, it had to be apocalyptic.
Oh yeah, you guys did.
Yeah. The schools down.
Yeah,
that sucks. Your school was probably like a block from your house too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I had to take two buses to get to my schools, but they used to bring in these giant front loaders to scrape the street.
Yeah.
And make room, but they would only do like half the block for the public school across the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it made like a story and a half of snow, a mountain of snow.
Yeah.
And I remember one time the garbage trucks came with the plows and they hit that mountain of snow. And I never saw a garbage truck bounce the back wheels off the ground and then come back again.
Yeah.
It stopped dead in its tracks. It was like, no, they had to chip away at it.
Yeah.
And then they made that front end loader come back and knock the mountain down because nobody could get past it except a small car.
Yeah, the water is impressive, huh? I mean,
It's an emerging technology.
Yeah, I just think that garbage truck getting slammed back by that snowman. That stuff doesn't want to go anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And Scott and I, we got plenty of snow days, but you have to remember, we weren't Hebron. We were Vernon public schools, remember?
Oh, we were,
had to wait to the V's, right? So you had to go through alphabetical and wait and hope that, come on, baby, that was going to come up.
Well, we had a Catholic school in town, and that one showed up earlier in the list. So you had a little inkling of what was going to happen, but it wasn't guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. If they call it off, you thought they were in cahoots with one another.
If I could get my hands on just the list of town names, I would read one and record it for myself. I'd put it on YouTube or something. There's got to be some other old nerd like me who wants to hear it just once.
There you may find that, and I don't know how niche you have to look. And you mentioned this off the air earlier this week, but there's a couple Instagram accounts that I don't know if I follow them or they just show up in my feed that are like 80s and 70s and 90s nostalgia stuff that are audio, and they're like, remember this? Like, I've started to see more like audio stuff pop up.
Oh, so like the Kmart Blue Light special recordings and stuff.
Yeah, like you're not the only one who's got a secret. You're not the only one with and I shouldn't say we're not the only ones who are could listen to the old Weather Channel Kenny G music over and over again.
That's right. You know, the internet has taught me anything. It's like, I'm not the only one blank.
Yeah, no kidding. Right there. You are not alone. Exactly. So, on that though, welcome to episode 20. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Sunday. And we had a late change. Eddie will not be able to make it. She's feeling a little bit under the weather. So, and hopefully Carlos will be joining us at some point. He's got a new bike, so we can't wait to hear from him and how that's going. Although I think he's waiting for parts. So I think it's been in the shop for a period of time, but we'll have to see what's going on there. Anyway, so this is episode 20. And we're gonna get right into the topics. We got a bit of a potluck. I wanted to do a few things today. Wanted to give Carlos a chance to talk about his new bike, and Eddie a chance to talk about her trip to Sturgis. Obviously, she's not going to make it. We'll see about Carlos. Also want to talk about getting dogs on bikes or pets on bikes in general. And we're going to call
I'd like to know the logistics of that.
Yeah, we're going to call this part 1. So I took down like a kind of, because there's a lot to unpack and we've only got, 45 minutes or so. But also like it's kind of, and this will be a theme, it's a good thing to kind of wade into it. And I am trying to get some other moto dog riders to join me on the show. And join us on the show here. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
It's a large pool of talent that you're trying to tap into, isn't it?
It's I'm glad you asked that question because, there's I do a lot on social media. We have this show and stuff, and I enjoy creating content and putting stuff out there and seeing other people react to it. And when I started, as naive as this may sound, when I started riding around with Larry, I didn't start to do it to try to get attention necessarily. I did it for because I was lonely and I needed a friend, not this to tug at your sympathetic strings, but it was more just I needed a buddy around. And then I started to notice the reaction. And of course, he likes staying on the bike, and people see a dog on a bike and they're like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, I thought, I don't know how many people do this. There are quite a few people that do it, and there are some really, popular, I don't know if you call them vloggers or content creators or whatever, that ride with their dogs. So I've tried to reach out to a few folks, and what I found is, there's a lot of people who are interested, so it's kind of like, on the one hand, it's like, wow, this person's got 95,000 followers and they're all rabid about, dogs on a bike. This is cool. And I found a lot of people to talk to. So we'll see if we can tap into that crowd. It may be a little bit
You
bigger
may
than
not
you
know
think.
this. Dogs are popular on the internet.
Yeah, almost as big as cats. I've heard this. Yeah, so people definitely like dogs and cats and boobs are all extremely these are stock quotes, have all been staples of the internet from day one, right? So we'll get back to that in a little bit. And we're also going to talk about a show that I want to bring up, and let's dive right into this. I'm gonna give you guys a topic that you may or may not have had a chance to prep for. Did you see in the show notes? I put a link for a show called American MC. Are either of you familiar with this show, and/or have you? Did you get to see the show notes, or just are you familiar with the show? Forgive me.
No.
No, never heard of it.
Okay. I would like to potentially, and we don't have to agree to this now, I'd like to put this out here as a potential old in the way project or kind of homework assignment, watch along, if you
Homework?
will. There's
I
one.
wasn't told there to be any homework.
Yeah, I know. You're absolutely right. There's one season of this show, and it is a reality TV show about a group of guys who start or try to start a motorcycle club in America, very just as it's aptly named. And it's I think it was probably done in, I don't have all the details up in front of me, probably like the last 10 years. So it's relatively new. It aired on, I forget what channel, and you can stream it just about anywhere. I think 2020. It's led by the main character, if you will, is a guy named Tommy Baker. I found this show through Facebook or Instagram, one of the two. It came up in my reels in one of the motorcycle groups that I'm in. Somebody had shared it. And I want to say people are sharing it because they were mocking it, but mocking it is almost not the right word. It's almost like the sense I got from the biker community as I was learning about this show was almost that it was like kind of like, this is something over here that's fucking weird, and we're laughing at it, but it's also like a train wreck that you can't not watch. So I'll stop there. Am I making sense with like what kind of thing it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general. My mom used to say they only make fun of you because they like you.
Yeah.
She was wrong.
Yeah. So the clips that I saw were a few clips people posted of crazy shit happening in the show.
Can you give me an example of something that's happened? Give me a plot line.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine, this won't spoil anything for us. Imagine a group of kind of weekend motorcycle riders, not necessarily like, not accountants and bookkeepers strapping on leather, guys who ride bikes, but are not like 1%er, hardcore motorcycle club guys. And they decide to start a motorcycle club. And that is, so that's the general background. And they go out and they start to do stuff, and you follow them as they ride, and they're trying to, create this club. And right away, they run into, they meet up with a group of Hells Angels at a bar somewhere in Arizona. So I'm going to stop here for a second because this is the first clip that I saw. And the reason why I kind of cued in on it is because I do have an interest in motorcycle culture, and this was kind of peering back. You don't see Hells Angels on video often and interacting in situations like that where there's so it was kind of like, how are these Hells Angels going to react to this group of weekend bikers, which is great video. I mean, it's why it's worth watching. And they end up going and riding with these Hells Angels, who are like, yeah, if you guys can keep up, you can come along with us. So right away, there's like 3 or 4 things here. And just as a rider and in motorcycle culture, these guys ride fast and they ride tight. So now you've got these weekend rider guys who are now about to try to pack up with a group of Hells Angels. And Scott, for your benefit, unlike, the Harley owners groups that, Carlos and I ride with, when you ride staggered or single file, depending on the conditions, these guys ride side by side in one lane at high speeds. When you're staggered, you have your whole lane to use if you need it. Obviously here you don't. So, and they expect you to hang tight. There's no like sitting back, whatever. So,
well, what if there's a big dead raccoon in the street right in front of right in your portion of the side-by-side lane?
Think quick.
Okay. Wheelie, got it.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, I think that's, that's really it. And in all seriousness, it's something that I think is seen synonymous with 1% clubs, definitely, because it's impressive and it's definitely intimidating and it's cool to see a big, a stream of bikes like that coming down the road. But it does take objectively speaking, it takes an enormous amount of skill to, and so there's something,
have either of you done it?
No, I have never. I mean, not like that. Never. No.
I've ridden side by side.
Yeah.
But not usually at highway speeds, at slower speeds.
Yeah, it makes sense.
50 and lower, depending on the road and depending on how far. I personally don't care for it. I prefer the staggered position.
Yeah.
Some guys want to ride tight like that because they think it keeps people from cutting up the group, which it can. But if you're close enough in a front and back position, you still have the line, in position. But a lot of times, like you may hear on the news, it happened here last year. There was accident, bridges closed, the Bear Mountain Bridge is closed. There's 6 motorcycles involved in an accident.
Yeah, pile up.
Those are the guys that are riding 2x2. Something happened to the guy in the front, and the other 5 crashed into him.
Yeah.
And they all went down because they didn't have a lot of space. It's a bridge with traffic coming at you in one lane and the guardrail on the other. So slower speeds, it's okay for me. I don't prefer it. Just like some guys want you so close like that you can practically touch them. I don't want to be that close to you.
Yeah.
Right? I can be a bike length behind you or more, and maybe a little bit more, and we're still a tight group. Obviously cars are not going to fit in, but if you ever get a person that panics, is going to miss their lane, sees a bunch of guys on their bikes in that lane, there's no chance for them to get over. Sometimes they come over anyway.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I'm not missing my lane, and they'll deliberately squeeze in where there's no room for them.
Yeah, I've had
and that causes its own problem.
Yeah, there's a whole. Yeah, that's a great point, and I can. Bear Mountain Bridge, that pileup you talked about, you see videos of that happening or the aftermath, and that's the kind of thing. You got to give yourself enough room to react. Always leave yourself a way out, and I think it's fun riding with a group, but call me selfish, but I know that there's a logic that I'm probably, there's probably something logical and objective here that's right that I'm ignoring, but I'd rather than trying to force yourself to stay as a pack in traffic, I'd rather fend for myself and get myself into a safe spot and out of, so I can feel comfortable versus, trying to maintain a living an amoeba of dudes down the road,
So it's not the kind of thing you want to do at highway speed at night in the rain.
You don't, and it's good that we keyed in on this, and I'll spoil I'll spoil a little bit of the drama of the series, but one of the things that happens, and I'm recounting this from a couple of clips that I've watched, so I want to. Liz and I are going to binge it and watch it, so we're signed up, but it's. A couple of the guys, not unlike myself, at a stop say, this is too much. Like, I don't want to ride at 90 miles an hour side by side with somebody. I can't keep up, or, and it's just, this isn't, and it's a combination of, I doubt, most guys are not going to be like, I can't keep up. They're not going to say it. They may mean that, or, but I think really what most guys are thinking, or like myself, would be like, I don't want to ride that fast. Like, it wouldn't matter if it was a motorcycle or a car or a golf cart or whatever. Like, there's a certain speed, a ground speed, that my internal, anyway. So
Yeah,
that,
I'm not the Thunderbirds or
Yeah.
the Blue Angels here,
Right. So I think it's interesting to watch, because this is something, that, as stupid, or I don't want to say stupid, but as, maybe as out there as this show may be, that kind of resonated with me for a second. So I was like, huh, I that's interesting. So there's a bit of that, Scott. What you're going to see, that's an example of some of the drama, is that these guys are being, they're immediately testing themselves, to try to, keep up with the biggest and the baddest. They choose a name for their motorcycle club in a patch that's called the Ice Cream Men from Hell. And I'm assuming we'll get some backstory on why that is, but they it seems like a bad name. It seems like a bad start. I think anything with ice cream, like, it's kind of that kind of thing. Like, if you're going to have something childlike and soft and sweet in your name, you better be like a certified fucking assassin killer to be able to carry that. Because anything less than that,
Care Bears Motorcycle Club. Or
if you say that you're ice cream, people are going to see if you're ice cream. That's what I think. Like, so I think, and that becomes a theme too, and that, to tease another item. The ride that they go on with the Hells Angels, by the way, is the Florence Prison Run, which is, Scott, you can look that up at if you're interested. Mike, have you ever heard of that before?
No.
It's a prison in I think it's in Arizona. I should know this, but or maybe it's Nevada, where the Hells Angels do an annual ride past it, and they actually go by, so the people in the prison can see and hear the bikes go by. So you got this loud caravan of bikes going by. So that's the ride that they invite them on to help out with. And you also see a little bit of, I think the way they meet these guys, it may not be a bar, it may be that they stop to help them, a Hell's Angel maybe who's got a bike issue, and that's where they give them supporter stickers, which is a whole other type of, the cultural nuance where, Scott, if you're certain clubs, if you're given a support sticker or something like that says, support your local Hell's Angels or your local Ice Cream Men from Hell, and you put that on your bike, that means something. You can only get it from a member, or that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of these things that are swirling around, and it's very interesting train wreck TV.
Remind me again why we're talking about this.
The reason why we're talking about this is because I would like to make it a homework assignment. Carlos has seen this as well. Independent of my seeing these clips, last week Carlos reached out to me and sent me a message and said, American MC, I found this show, Gary Busey, you got to watch this. So I knew what he was talking about, and then I didn't get back to him. And then he sent me a message again this week. I forgot to respond to that comment, and he sent me another message saying, American MC, Prime Video, watch this now. So I'm going to actually, instead of the clips that I've seen, I'm going to dive in and actually watch the series. Liz and I are going to throw it on later today. And I think you don't have to watch this, but I think it would be interesting. Give it, maybe try an episode, or even just a clip, and we'll have to catch up on this in a future episode here. So, homework assignment, is that fair enough?
All right.
Okay, I'll look for it.
All right.
Is it on Netflix? Is it on Netflix or?
It is on Netflix. I think I don't know specifically. It's one of those. It's a few years old now, and it wasn't. I think it's one of those shows that looks like it's on more than one streaming service. So you may be able to get it depending on whatever you're paying for, like Netflix or Hulu or Prime. It should be in one of those. And I think it's included with Amazon Prime. Like, if you have Amazon Prime and you do Prime Video, you could check it out there. So,
all right.
Yeah, so definitely give that a watch when you get a chance. I think it's definitely worth it. That'll be our homework assignment for today. All right, so let's change gears a little bit, and let's switch to the topic du jour that originally we were going to focus on before we shifted things up, and that was getting a dog on a motorcycle. And I say dog because I don't want to do that, like, or cat or iguana or whatever.
Weasel, right? Yeah.
So we're just going to use, for the purposes of this conversation today, folks, we're going to use dog as our sort of all-purpose pet term. And the title of today's episode, by the way, was Hogs, Dogs, and Slogs. So unfortunately, the hog hasn't made it here in Carlos. He's got the new hog. The slog was Eddie's ride to Sturgis. She's not feeling well, so we'll catch up with her next week. And we're moving on to the dogs, which is talking about having pets on your bike. What do you think about that? Not bad, huh?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clever.
Ma, the meatloaf!
Yeah, added a few new sounds to the board this week. So, what do you think about this one?
Old Man River.
No, that's not for you, Scott. I see you shaking.
Well,
your head.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it applies. But...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't apply.
Okay, all
Just
right.
breaking it up for a
As
moment.
long as we're clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, moving on back to the dogs commentary. So, people ask me, how did you get your dog on a motorcycle? Everywhere I go, you get that question in one shape or form, like, and it usually comes in, like a kind of a point and like, how did this happen exactly? And how did you get from, walking and, man's best friend on the couch to riding on the back of a Harley? Fair question. And it didn't happen through any sort of methodical process necessarily that I followed at all. So I've thought about it enough, and I've looked back on the experience thus far, and I'm ready to start to talk about, Carlos has mentioned this as a good topic. If you're thinking about this, how do you kind of wade into it? And I have a few tips that I'm going to offer here that are, my suggestions. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I know you don't have pets that you ride with, but please, I'm sure you've got some good probative questions you can add to the discussion. So the first thing I thought about is you got to know animals, right? So if you're thinking about riding with a pet on a motorcycle and you're not a animal person yet, I would say that would be a possible barrier of entry. And what I mean by that, being an animal person, is somebody who has pets and is around pets and chooses to be with animals on a regular basis. And I am not, this isn't me virtual signaling, but I've have pets. I've had pets my whole life. And in my married years, we've never had fewer than 2 at a time, it seems like. We have 4 cats and 2 dogs right now. What I mean by that is, while I'm not a veterinarian, I've spent an enormous amount of time in the presence of dogs and cats, and you get to know their behaviors and tendencies and what they like. And for example, I know that most dogs that I've had, almost every dog that I can think of before Larry, if you turned on a vacuum cleaner or a leaf blower or anything that operates at that audio level, they bolt in a second. Right. So, Larry, by the way, doesn't for some reason, which is, we'll come back to. That's something we can come back to. But if you're not a pet person or somebody who has some kind of, has some experience, don't let this be the first thing that you do. Like, I'm going to buy a motorcycle. I'm going to go out and adopt a dog, and I'm going to, take on the world. This is not, don't eat that whole elephant in one bite. So be somebody, know thyself, and know, are you an animal person or not? And if you're not already, maybe start first with that and get to, spend some time and get to know an animal, and go from there. So that's my first suggestion. How does that fare? Thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay, makes
Sounds
sense.
right. Yeah.
Common
I wouldn't
sense.
pick up a stray dog, throw it on the back of a bike. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So the other thing, the next thing after that, tip number 2, is if you are a pet person and you're thinking about, okay, is my pet, I want my dog or my cat or my iguana to ride on the bike, are they a candidate for this or not? And they may or may not be. And there's a lot of variables that go into that we are not going to try to dissect here. All of size is a big thing you have to think about, weight, disposition. If they're the kind of dog that bolts when you turn on the vacuum cleaner, they're probably not going to want to ride on the back of a motorcycle, given the sound, that may be uncomfortable for them. But know those things about the dog and consider, do we have, an animal? Am I doing something that's going to inherently make this animal uncomfortable? In other words, if you know right away that they hate certain things, they may not be a good fit. So know that. Also know that you can't, your odds of going out and adopting or, Hanks forbid, buying a pet, buying a dog for the purposes of doing this specifically and having it work out that the dog likes it and everything is good, I don't know scientifically what those odds are, but they're probably not great. And you probably have a better chance of disappointing yourself and running the risk that you did something you didn't want to do. So, you have to, there's no formula to knowing who's a good pet to get on a bike, although there are probably some, a pug is probably better candidate than a Great Dane, just in that kind of spectrum of thinking, but there's no guarantees. So don't think that you can adopt or buy or take a pet that you already have and get them on the bike just because you want to start doing it. So I think that's one thing to be common sense about. Next up is, if you do have a pet and you have an animal you think is a good candidate, consider how you're going to do this. And this is probably, they're all really important. But this to me is the most important, because this underpins the pet's safety and your safety when you ride. The how part is the most important. How are you going to have the animal be on your bike, be safe while on your bike, be accessible if needed, or be in a way where you can get to them in an emergency? How are you going to address all of these things while they're on the bike, while still being able to legally and safely operate your motorcycle? So that should if it's not obvious, that would mean something like, if your plan is to one-arm carry your dog while you ride your bike, obviously that's not going to do it, right? So know that you have to have, they won't sit on a seat and hold on to you, although I've seen some interesting videos like that. But more than likely, you're going to have to get some gear or acquire something to be able to equip the bike so that you can actually take the pet on, which hopefully should seem straightforward enough. Once you talk about getting on with gear and how you're going to do it, you also have a little bit of a side possibility here, and I use that pun intended, which is the sidecar. And I don't want to. I'm not at all qualified to talk about sidecars. I'm hoping to get somebody who's a dog rider that I've connected with on social media to come and talk about that. But I'm not a sidecar person, but they do fit dogs well. You do see a lot of people with sidecars putting dogs in them. They seem to be a commonplace, and you could fit a larger dog in there as well. So I don't know, Mike, do you see a lot of sidecars out by you? I don't see too many down here.
Actually, I see very few sidecars. I see a couple of the trikes, the three wheelers, like with the wheels in the front. What do they call them? A Tomahawk or
Can-Ams?
And what was the other one?
Can-Am.
Can-Ams, and I think it's either the Hatchet or a Tomahawk is another one.
Yeah.
And then I'll see every once in a while on weekends, I'll see trikes like Carlos has.
Yeah.
But very few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see them as often out here either. I do see quite a few of those Can-Ams and those three wheelers, which we're talking about motorcycles here, but the three wheel option, whether it's a trike or one of those two in the front, whatever we call that, those I think some of those even have passenger seating in them, so you could technically fit a dog, maybe even a larger dog. So that might be something, if you want to ride and you're averse to a motorcycle, that might be a good option too. What about the slingshot? Is that what you were thinking of?
Slingshot, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was they have that massive 30-inch back tire on it thing, like that huge. Yeah,
but you know what? The trikes can be a little unstable. The standard trike with the two wheels in the back and the one in the front.
Yeah.
They're and I learned that. Well, not by riding it, by when I was coming back from Americade, there was 5 of us, and we were doing about 80, I don't know, 75, 80. And this guy in a trike shot by us like a rocket slip. I was like, wow, look at this guy go, right? And but when we caught up to him an off ramp, it was a big sweeping curve off ramp. I practically rear-ended this guy. This guy went from doing 100 to 30.
Yeah.
In this ramp, and I was like, "What's going on, man?" And I realized they must be very tippy in the hard curves.
Yeah.
And the ones with the wheels in the front, from what I understand, are much more stable.
Yeah.
When you ride.
Yeah, they seem to be getting more popular.
Yeah, I've seen. I've ridden with a group where there was a woman who was in front of me, and somebody pulled out from the gas station, wasn't paying attention, and she zigged around that car faster than I think I could have on my two wheels with the three wheels,
Yeah.
and stayed upright. It was an impressive move, right? And I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think
So I
I've
was like, that bike is really stable, isn't it?
yeah, I may have mentioned this before. I'm sure I brought this up in a past episode, so I'm retreading old ground. But there was a group that I rode with for a bit last year or earlier this year, and one of the riders was an older woman who had gone down about a year ago, and one of the injury to her wrist was such that she said, I just can't do a regular bike anymore. So she now had one of those. I think it was a Can-Am. I almost want to say like was it an Indian version, like maybe Indians making them now, but I'm pretty sure it was one of those two-wheel up front deals. And as we were heading out, I asked the question like, how does this thing go in the turns? And she as as soon as you got to the first set of twisties and all the fastest people took off, she was right there with them, and I didn't see her again after that. So they can ride them pretty hard, I guess, but
Yeah.
they do teach, by the way, well, slight derail on Can-Ams, but they do at the place where I took my safety course a few years ago. They do safety courses on those now there too. So I mean, you can ride one of those. I don't know if it's a different course or whatever, but I think you need a Class M, in California anyway. You still need a motorcycle license for it. So at any rate, so real quick before I keep going on the how you get somebody on your bike, Mike, do you know anything mechanically about putting a sidecar on a non-sidecar bike and at all what that entails? It's okay
Um,
if you don't. I'm just fishing, and
my
I'm putting you on the
my
spot
my
here.
brother-in-law mounted a sidecar to his. He had a Honda CB450, and he was able to mount a sidecar to his bike. I think it mostly depends on the kind of frame that the bike has.
Okay.
Yeah, because some bikes, the engine is
Oh,
is part of the frame.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And then some bikes have a full solid frame and the engine fits inside.
Right.
So I think as long as you have a solid frame with
Independent
clear
frame.
anchor points, you could ride. Because he rode with it. I mean, it was an underpowered bike for the sidecar,
Yeah.
but he enjoyed it. He had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I've got enough
Um,
projects in my almost finished garage as it is, but that would be a cool thing to try to do with like get an old Sportster or something like that and put a try to put a sidecar on it. Anything like that would be
and
neat to
and
try.
there are tricks to riding a sidecar bike
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are
because you
different
got
than
to
riding
come
a
off
regular
that. You
bike.
come off that wheel sometimes. I would think in a turn,
Yeah,
right?
they call it flying the wheel when you fly the sidecar.
Oh, that sounds cool.
When you
No, it
when you
doesn't.
make
No, not as a person who'd be riding in that sidecar. It does not sound cool.
yeah, especially if it's a surprise to both of you, the passenger and the rider.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
my underwear would be a total loss, Jay.
Yeah, that's funny because one of the things I wanted to talk about today that I had as an audible from that was not in the show notes was riding with passengers, and this is somewhat analogous to riding with a dog. We'll pick that up in maybe next episode. I'm at the point now where I want to start trying having a passenger on the bike, and I've gotten there through just riding experience, but then also a few thousand miles now with like 250 pounds of gear on the back of my bike. I feel like I've gotten used to the weight and the wind a little bit that, I'm more confident at any rate. So we'll pick
You're not going to
that
do
up.
a passenger and Larry, are you?
I could, yeah, easily, yeah. Larry's carrier is on the luggage rack, so I have
Oh,
I
okay.
have full usage of my passenger seat and everything if I want for that purpose, which would be cool for like if Liz and I want to go out somewhere and take a ride with a dog or something to be fun to do. But at any
There are
rate,
little tricks to riding with a passenger.
yeah, tell me.
Otherwise,
Say that again. Little trick.
there are little tricks to riding with a passenger. Like, I don't know if you want to wait and you want to talk about it now or
Whatever.
I want to hear about it.
Yeah, tell
Let's
me
hear
about
it.
it. Let's hear it. Yeah.
okay. So I usually tell people that have never ridden with a passenger before. There's like three things I tell somebody that gets on the back of the bike if they've never been on a bike with me, right? I tell them once you get on the back seat, once you're sitting on the bike, don't put your legs down on the ground because you can't reach the ground, and you're actually going to burn yourself on the muffler.
Yeah.
So keep your feet on the pegs, if you want to shift your weight while we're moving, or you want to get off the bike, tap me on the shoulder, get my attention, and then tell me like I got to move. Okay, no problem. Shift your weight because the bike will wobble depending on how much they move. And then I tell them, don't get off the bike till I tell you can get off the bike. Once I like put the kickstand down or I'm bracing for the weight, so swing your leg over the back. I say when you're on the back of the bike, the only thing you should do is you don't have to do anything but look over my shoulder if for whatever turn I'm going into, right? So if I'm going into a left-hand turn, just look over my left shoulder. And if I'm going into a right-hand turn, just look over my right shoulder. Because sometimes the passenger, they're like, oh, the bike's leaning.
Yeah.
They want to help.
Yeah.
Right? So they lean more than you want to.
Yeah.
And now you're like, whoa, what's going on? Right?
Yeah.
Or they don't like the feel of leaning because it feels like they're going to fall off.
Yeah.
And you're here and they start leaning the other way.
Right.
And now the bike starts going straight. It's
Yeah.
not going into the curve anymore because the two of you are fighting each other.
Yeah.
Right. I had a passenger one time as a girl, and I put the blinker on. As soon as I put the blinker on, she started hanging off the left side of the bike. And I almost changed lanes.
Yeah. No.
And I was like, don't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the easiest thing is just look over my shoulder. Don't do anything else. And that puts them in perfect line with you. And you never have a problem.
Yeah. That's
right?
Mike.
And then.
Go on.
So if I look over your left shoulder, Mike, and you're turning left, well, is that going to give me the right amount of lean that you need?
It just keeps you in line with me perfectly. You know,
Yeah.
It doesn't make you do anything.
Okay.
Right?
Keeps you neutral, technically,
because you have
right?
the gyroscopic effect, but
Sure.
body weight and lean also comes into play.
Right.
So like if somebody's counter leaning to you, they can make the bike start to stand up, and you'd have to fight a lot harder to make it go over. Because for somebody that's never been, they feel like they're falling off. Like when you go into a big lean, they're like, holy shit, I'm going to fall off the bike. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when they're not prepared for it too, or they're not.
Yeah, I remember my dad giving me this kind
you,
of coaching when we first rode together. He's like, you gotta, you can't try to lean against it.
Right.
We're gonna have problems if you do that. We're not going to fall. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, as long as you're looking over my shoulder, you're in line. We never have a problem.
Yeah. And
then the old anecdote is, you tell how good of a rider you are by how many times you hit helmets with your passenger.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. Because when you're riding and you brake abruptly or accelerate abruptly, it doesn't matter to you because you're holding on and you compensate.
Yeah.
Your passenger has no clue what you're doing, about to do, or going to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like if you slow down really fast, boom, you hit the helmet's hit. Or if you accelerate, they sling back and then they come forward, boom, your helmet's hit.
Yeah, I've got a few funny video clips I like, not that I've published, but that I'll watch video of Larry and I riding together, and you'll see me taking off from like a stoplight or whatever, and you can watch his head in the back, and he's like, like that as he bounces through, and he's starting to, like, I can see sometimes I watch, I don't know if it's actually happening, but I feel like he's starting to get a little bit of the, like, he's starting to learn, like, and it would turn a little bit like that, like he's starting to brace himself. And but for your validation, Mike, I'm glad you brought up those tips, because in true to form and anticipation of wanting to take a passenger, I tried to read and look at, what is the conventional wisdom from riders say about what are the things that you have to think of. And there's a checklist of maybe 3 or 4 things, and you hit all of those except for one that I hadn't heard of before this past couple of weeks when I went out to start looking, and that is when it's kind of like a subnote of one of the things you said, which is, as the passenger has to be prepared and looking and be prepared for what's going to happen. Meaning, like, I'll try to tell you in advance if I need to, but if I'm coming up to a stoplight, I'm going to stop. If we're coming up to a turn, we're going to turn. Like, so you should know when turns and stops are coming, because those are the 2 times when your weight, like you said, will matter. And the one I hadn't thought about at the stop was, don't let your weight come crashing onto the rider. Like, if you're a passenger, and I could see this happen maybe if you're riding with your significant other and they're maybe sidled up on you a little bit tight, and if you come down, you slow up to a stop sign, if they push all their weight onto you, you can lose control of the bike. It pushes all the weight of the bike just onto the front tire, so you lose any rear braking, or you lose some of your. There's a bunch of physical reasons that seem like they made sense, and it just you don't want as the the driver, you don't want to be surprised by having a 200-pound person throw themselves into you, the last 20 yards before a stop sign or something, I guess. So that seemed like one I hadn't thought of before, but good to know, good stuff to. And I like that I like that look over each shoulder, because that was one of the things I was struggling with how to explain. It makes sense to me when I read it in the as a rider, that you want the passenger essentially to stay neutral. And the way it makes sense to me is like if they were luggage that didn't move, when you went into a left-hand turn, the luggage would be right in line with you. Everything would be right in line with you. So you don't want their weight to be too far either way. So it's kind of the same concept. So makes sense. And that's what I got to get. Why it's going to be our official crash test dummy. To start off, he frequently needs rides around town and stuff like that sometimes. So, but I'm gonna test him out, and we'll do a few loops around the block and see how he does. And
short trips are best. You figure out if you like it or hate it. You figure out if he likes it or hates it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the rear seat tends to be
uncomfortable,
lacking in support. Yeah, and whereas somebody's sitting on that little pillow for an hour, pretty soon it starts to burn a hole in your bottom, and you're like, I just want off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I also think too that and this is not something I've like, my bike is not meant to. I have all the comforts you can offer a passenger in a backrest, a sissy bar pad, a seat pad, nice pegs and all that. But at the end of the day, you're still sitting on the back of a Sportster, right? So it's not like you're in one of those cush couch things on the back of one of those big custom bikes. So I don't think it would be like it's not comfortable for me sometimes, and I'm the one and I'm riding the bike, but I'm also the one I'm getting, I'm getting a charge out of the fact that I'm yanking on the throttle and feeling the wind. So like if my ass starts to hurt, it's not that big a deal. I think if you're just the person sitting on the back, eating wind, it might start to get old a little fast. So anyway, I'd like to have the opportunity to do some stuff. So we'll give that a test, but we'll talk more about passengers in an upcoming episode. Bringing it back to where we started and meandered on this train of thought. Know how you're going to put the animal on the bike. You got to have a carrier. There are lots of carriers out there. There are 3 or 4 that are probably the most popular, if you want to say that. And I mean that they're the ones that you see people using, and they tend to come to the search engine up at the top. Mine is made by company Kirakin, I think is how it's pronounced. Unless I'm, but they make a lot of motorcycle accessories, and they make a really good, big, I think they call it a pet palace. So I'm happy with it. That's what I use for Larry. And although I'm planning on ultimately building my own, because I think, I started to make a rigid frame for the one that I have, and decided, if I can figure out what to make it out of, that just making my own box, basically, that I could set up exactly the way that we want it, and mount it, build, mounted custom and all that would be the best option. So we'll see about, that's one of our projects in the future. But know how you're going to put the pet in the bike, because one arm in it like a football is not going to work. Last but not least, the question of safety. Is this, are you worried what's going to happen? And this is sort of this is less of a tip and more of a position, I guess I could say. And that is, riding a motorcycle is dangerous. Putting any, a living thing on it just adds them to that danger equation. And, so there's always a risk that something could happen. I get a laugh out of it in turn, and this is, maybe not, this isn't good, Jay, but this is a bad karma laugh, but I sometimes laugh when people ask me about Larry wearing a helmet, and I tend to think like, any kind of accident we're going to get into where Larry could need a helmet, it's probably not going to be an accident that Larry's going to make it out of, and it's, these are not like DOT helmets for dogs. They look nice and they're padded, and some of them are really cheap, but they're, at the end of the day, they don't make a dog motorcycle helmet that's approved by the Dog Motorcycle Association or something like that. So
Right.
you're kind of kidding yourself in that, regard. And my hypocrisy only goes so far. So, there's a danger that's involved there. And this is, I respect and understand people might have different ethical or moral positions on this, but at the end of the day, I think Larry is going to have a better life with me on a motorcycle and doing all the things that we do, even if it were cut short, than he would not on those things. And that's my, my choice. And I would caveat that and say, and in more simple terms, dogs stick their heads out of car windows for a reason. And maybe there's some less interesting answer to why that is, but I think it's because they like to put their heads in the wind. Maybe there's a veterinarian who'll tell us that's because they have nose mites and it helps them or whatever. But I just like to think it's because they like to put their head in the wind. So Larry loves to have his head in the wind, and that's how I knew he was a good fit and that he liked this, and that even if it was, we got hurt, we were both doing something that we like. So you have to kind of, your mileage may vary. It is dangerous. And you can buy safety equipment. I'll close this piece by saying, from the safety standpoint, I use a number of things to try to keep Larry safe. First of all, his carrier is fully harnessed and latched 6 ways from Sunday to my bike. He's double tethered, so he wears a harness. It has a collar, but he wears a harness that wraps around his torso. It's got a hook, the loop on the back, and he's got 2 tethers that go to corners of the carrier that prevent him from being able to jump out of the carrier. So he's got enough slack that he can stand up and put his head out, but he can't get his whole body out. So that keeps him in the carrier, and it comes with one. I put another one in there just to, address my OCD. So that he's tethered, the carrier is tethered. He has glasses that people absolutely go crazy for when they see them, and he doesn't care for them. He tends to knock them off. He likes to squint. He'll look into the sun, and we're at home, he squints. So when we're on the bike and he likes to take the glasses off, and he just squints, and that's, that's what he does. So those are the safety measures I take. He does have a helmet, but we don't use it. So those were the tips were just to kind of start thinking about this. The few things, if you're thinking about taking a pet on a motorcycle, some of the things you can consider. First of all, if you're not a pet person, you may want to start there first. You need to consider how you're going to get the animal, if the animal is a candidate for this in the first place. Don't buy a pet just to take him on a bike, only to find out that neither you or the pet like the bike or each other or whatever. Know how you're going to get that animal safely on the bike so you guys can ride together and go places and be safe. And we'll talk in the future about all that goes into it. It's not just like having plopping a person. You've got to be able to care for that animal everywhere you go, and you got to be able to keep that stuff on your bike too. So know how you're going to do all of that. And as far as safety goes, it's just as dangerous as it always was. So you need to think about whether or not it's the right thing for you and your dog, and help them, make that decision. As I've joked before, people ask, almost like, how did you guys arrive at this together? Like me and the dog, how did you guys team up and do this? And it's not like, I sat down and asked him and he was like, okay. I will tell you that, and in closing, as we wrap up on the topic, I will tell you that if I start to get my boots and I grab my jeans and my keys, he goes bananas.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So that tells me something, and it's and I had to take 3 rides this week for doctor's appointments. I think they were all doctor's appointments. Oh no, one of them was the magic store, nerd night. And Larry was not welcome in any of those places. The doctors don't really like him when they show up at the hospital or whatever.
Right.
But
Service animal.
Yeah. So he had to stay home 3 times, which meant I went through the whole routine, and he had to watch me get up, and I owe him a ride today, I think. So
you don't have any PETA type people hounding you, say, how dare you bring your dog on a motorcycle and put him through this stress?
That's a good. I wish I did. I wish I had that. I wish I had people. It's funny. I thought about this before the show, and in just a second ago, I know you had to step away. We were talking.
Yeah,
about,
sorry about that. Freaking clowns at the doctor's office.
Are you all squared away now, or good?
Well, yeah. The call dropped after I waited 2 hours for a call back, and then 15 minutes later he calls back. He's like, "Oh, I noticed our call dropped." Yeah, that was 15 minutes ago, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
He went down, had a smoke.
Yeah, exactly. I had lunch. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I had 15 minutes, but yeah, I did mention like what I do for safety, and I won't hash over that. It was kind of like just this what I do on the bike, but part of it, if it's ethical or moral or whatever, you've got to decide if this is right for you and the dog. And as I said to Mike, Larry is better off riding with me than not. So I don't get. I do see on other people's posts all the time. If you see a motorcycle post that gets to the level where it's getting heavy traffic on Instagram, and it's like there's somebody with a dog strapped to them, and they're almost always like legit ways to carry your dog. There's nothing too dangerous. There's always somebody in the comments that's and this is like any topic you want, that's got to fire off about, oh my god, how can you do that? And next thing you know, and I mean, I saw a video this week of a cat with its hands on somebody's dashboard, and the first comment was this thing about like, and what happens when you get in a car accident and the cat goes through the so to answer your question, sorry for the tirade. I don't get those kind of posts, but I would love them if you want to. I'd love the engagement if you want to come complain about it. But I think that I think you got to kind of wash that away. I think if you want to be somebody who thinks that that's not the right thing to do, then that's your business and don't do it. I think like as I said, dogs stick their head out the window for a reason, and it's and they seem to like it. Larry likes it, so I would say unless he says otherwise, we're riding, right? I would welcome the engagement though, if anybody would like to come and tell me what their thoughts are on it. And I'd welcome another view on it. So and on that note, what I'd like to do is I am working on trying to recruit some folks who can come and join us and talk about this subject in a little bit more detail, to tell me their experience as well, I should say. And a next an upcoming segment as well, we'll talk about what it's like riding and actually being on the road and actually traveling, and kind of get into the actual fun stuff about what have I learned in 4 months or so of riding with a dog, and the good, the bad, and everything in between. So we'll catch up with that on a future episode coming up soon. That's it for the riding with dogs topic. We're right up on our time almost here, and I know it's Sunday, so I don't want to keep you guys too much longer than usual. Couple of things before we wrap up, and I'll ask you guys, anything that we missed on riding with pets, or any that you guys want to catch up on before I move on?
I don't think so.
No,
good.
I thought that was pretty good.
All right, so last topic on my list that I wanted to cover real quickly, and this is kind of a bit of a brain grenade, but it's and we won't go out on a sad note, but I think I live here in Imperial Beach in Southern California, which for those of you who don't know is just tucked in under San Diego in Southern California, and there's a great bar and restaurant called Cook's Corner. If you're from the area, I'm sure you've heard of this. And sadly, there was a shooting, a domestic violence shooting there last week that was really out of character for the place, despite the kind of rep that roadhouses and biker bars get. This is a place that's been where it opened since the late 1800s. It's like it's tucked in the canyons. It's east of Irvine, so think maybe like 45 minutes from the coastline. That's where this is, up in the mountains and the canyons. I happened upon it by accident when I went to Born Free a few months ago. Just completely didn't even know I was going to be driving past there. So it's a really, really neat place, and a tough break for those folks. And I'm looking to see if there's a way we can donate a few bucks. They do so much for the riding community. And for you guys who live on the East Coast, if you live between, I am 2 hours south of LA, right? If you live between LA and San Diego and you're going on a weekend ride and it's going to involve mountains and canyons, you can almost guarantee that Cook's Corner, just like, Josie's Hideout and a couple other places, are going to be stops that you hit. And this place was a staple. So hopefully, those guys bounce back and there's no break in the crowds going there. So good luck to them on that. All right, so let's go ahead and bring it around, and I want to once again throw it out there. I'm gonna put Carlos on the hook because he's not here. I'm gonna speak for him and say I think he would definitely be in favor of this. We'll try to see if we can stomach an episode or two of American MC, and then when we regroup in the next episode, we're gonna break this down. We'll talk a little bit about what we've learned. So try to do that if you can. Like I said, Liz and I are gonna get into it. And if I didn't say this before, if I wasn't clear, Gary Busey does make an appearance in the series. So Gary Busey is a writer, and apparently he does at some point show up soon. So you're gonna want to check that out.
I think we can get him on the show.
Well, he was on a recent interview, although I think this may have been a deep fake talking about sausage. Did you guys hear about that at all? No, you didn't see this?
No.
No, I don't have my Google alerts for Gary Busey set up anymore, so I must have missed it.
Well, since you said that, I'll tell you the way I know this is because Wyatt came up to me yesterday, and as he does frequently, and shoved his phone in my face and was like, "You got to watch this." And what he played for me was this.
Let's talk about buttered sausage. Talk about buttered sausage, where it comes from, what it does. Why is it doing what it's doing? Get it out of my face.
Buttered sausage.
Buttered sausage.
Yeah, once again, this is Gary Busey in an interview he did with some dude recently that was supposed to be about financial markets.
Let's talk about buttered sausage. Talk about buttered sausage, where it comes from, what it does. Why is it doing what it's doing? Get it out of my face.
Buttered sausage.
Buttered sausage.
I would eat buttered sausage.
Yeah, so I don't know if I think it's the clip is just funny, and that why just put this picture of me. Why just had this repeating video of just Gary Busey going buttered sausage, and he has no. I mean, it's funny to him. He has no idea who Gary Busey is, right? So having your kid show you this, it's like this is funny at so many levels. Like I could probably cameo this guy right now, Wyatt, if you want to meet him, but. So it may be a deep fake. We'll have to check that out. But yeah, he does make an appearance in this series. So definitely check that out.
Just proof that deep fakes have their uses.
Yeah, I think they were trying to spoof the dude who was doing the interview. Again, without too far down this rabbit hole, it looked like he was maybe some kind of financial news. And for some reason, he was having Gary Busey as a guest, which seems like you kind of should have known what you were getting yourself into, regardless. But all right, gentlemen, anything on the horizon? I know Mike and I probably have less to do this week than you, Scott. You made that crack last week about work, but anything exciting going on this week?
Oh, well, I went to Costco yesterday, and they had full-out Christmas decorations. I'm
saw
thrilled
your
about
pictures,
that.
yes.
And if you don't like that, don't at me. You just go eat shit. You can go live your sad life where you don't like Christmas. I was freaking thrilled to see that. I got my picture taken with every single thing in there. And now my wife wants a 12-foot tree, so I'm taking donations.
Yeah.
So they skipped right over Thanksgiving, huh?
Oh yeah, forget that. We don't need you can do both. That's the beauty of it, Mike. You can still eat Thanksgiving with your tree up. I do it every year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Liz, we got a new fake tree this year, just like a month ago, on one of those summer sale deals where they're significantly marked down. But our ceiling, our condo, we had still a tree that we had from our condo, which was a tighter space, and we've got more ceiling here. So, which reminds me too, I am almost moved into the new Old in the Way studio / shops / workspace. I'm still waiting on the garage door to be installed, which is a key piece of moving the valuables and stuff. Yeah,
you rode out a tropical storm with no door, which is really impressive.
Yes, I did. I had to. I don't want to badmouth our contract. I'll let you guys go. We'll wrap up in a second, but I don't want to badmouth our general contractor because they've been fantastic. But in the storm last week in San Diego, the hurricane, it was very weird because
more like a hurricane.
Yeah, it ended up being
which is a good thing. It's probably for the best that it didn't materialize. I hope people will take it seriously in the future. That's always the downside. When I lived in Florida, it was like that. Oh, of course, they called for a hurricane. We got nothing. Well, you know what? You should celebrate that, dickhead.
Yeah. This is there was very little energy around people getting exercised about it. And I talked, in some of the communities and stuff, I have some nerd groups I'm in around here, and there's a lot of transplants who commented on the difference between East Coast versus West Coast. Like Mike, I was saying to Scott last weekend, the morning news, as the hurricane is hitting, this is peak, Armageddon is supposed to happen. like they just cut away to like regular national programming. And I said to Scott, like on the East Coast, like every person that works in the weather department at every fucking channel would be there for the duration of this thing.
Oh my God, the Weather Channel, every male there was at like full staff erection over this thing, and nothing,
there was
nothing
a great
was going on in California.
There was a great video I saw of people getting ready on the East Coast with like, shopping and stuff, and then there was one of people at California, at San Diego, at Hurricane Harbor, like in the pool. But so yeah, it was weird because it ended up being not a big deal. But my contractor calls me the night before and says, we don't have a garage door, I don't have anything in there yet, but it's fully sheetrocked, insulated.
Yeah, we could stand to not have tropical storm rain and winds on the sheetrock.
Yeah, the only thing in there was a fridge and our washer and dryer were in there, which those are things to be somewhat worried about. But night before, it's like, guys, put a tarp up, and we're like, this
I'll just go to the tarp closet. Sure.
Yeah, we're like just like through a text conversation, and it's like, yeah, just tack it up. And Liz, not my wife, Liz is the owner of this construction company. She's a woman, a veteran, and this is her business. And her father is actually like one of her lead like construction guys who does. So we deal with Liz and this guy Gabriel, and they're great. Gabriel is he doesn't know this, but I call him my Mexican stepfather, or father-in-law, because he's like helped us through a lot, and we don't have a network we don't have any family out here.
Right.
But they're like, yeah, just and if you work, this is part of Mexican culture, and this is safe for me to discuss. There's like the way it's explained is like, yeah, you just like that, just like do that. Like, wait a minute, how do we put the tarp up? Yeah, just get it, tack it, and like so. I was like, I don't want to wreck the space. Let's do this. And I got a tarp, and I put some grommets, and I hook and grommeted it across the top, and then I weighted it on the bottom, and it held, man.
Was it loud? Did it flap?
It was loud at night. And then, I know we're way over time, but the wind, like the forecast said the wind right now should be 35 miles an hour, and it was 2. And it was like that for most of the day. And it was like that on one side of the mountains in San Diego, they really got it. But if you were down where we were, there was like no wind. So, but at night it picked up to like 20, and at 20 mile an hour winds, that thing like
20 is a decent amount of wind. It's a non-trivial amount. How about that?
Yeah, and it faces it's east-west, faces the west, but you had like that east-west wind thing going on, so it was whirling pretty good.
Yeah, you could have saved about $6,000 on the door had you known that tarp would do.
Yeah, so I don't think this. I'm not going to do this, but I'm so desperate to move into the space, but really I can't move my electronics and stuff like that in there because it just would be foolish to do that and not expect them to be there in the morning, whatever. But but I want to. I'm like, I texted her the other day. I was like, how safe how much of a theft deterrent is a tarp? But
low.
Yeah, I have to think if at the very least I'm going to hear the motherfucker getting caught up in the tarp and have a chance to get out there and get my stuff. But
no, what they do is they take your tarp, lay it on the ground, fill all your stuff inside, hold it up like
exactly.
It's true,
and then walk away.
Yeah.
They're like, thanks to the tarp. I couldn't have got away with all this stuff without it.
Yeah, I guarantee you're not going to hear it, Jay, when they're using a utility knife just to cut the tarp down and into a beautiful folded package with all your stuff in it.
Yeah, so we're going to wait for the door. That's coming soon. And one last note on the weather. And I mounted a Ring security camera in the backyard, and I bought like this hollow owl. Yeah, it's a tongue twister. To cut out just like I'm not trying to be clandestine. I just don't want it to look so obvious. And they do distract. We have an avocado tree there too, so it keeps some of the birds away, or they're supposed to. But I just grabbed this thing at Home Depot, and the head bobbles on it like a bobblehead doll would. So it's
just a plastic owl dummy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it pops off, and it's just like a screw with a little, ball joint type of thing that pops on there, and there's a weight on the back of the head, and it's supposed to rotate around or whatever. Physics being what they are, once I mounted it up on this pole in my backyard, the head just did like this and turned around.
Yeah, gravity took over.
Yeah,
right.
And it was permanently looking over its shoulder right down into my neighbor's pool. And it's right in the four corner spot, like where the yards meet. And I noticed it, my wife noticed it, and we both joked about it throughout the last week. But like, it wasn't high up on my list of priorities to fix. I did know it looked kind of weird, but whatever. my neighbor kindly knocked on my door the other day and was like, "Do you mind if I just like turn its head so it's I can do it?" He's like, "It was very polite." I'm like, "No, I got it. Don't worry about it." So I
What was the neighbor's problem with it though?
It's looking right down at like, so if you're sitting like, and keep in mind these are like not even quarter acre kind of lots, right, like right on top of each other. So if you're looking over the fence, like right over the fence, there's somebody else's patio set and their pool. So now you've got this big 2.5 foot tall owl with these creepy ass eyes that's staring, I mean, right down. It looked like perfectly down into their yard.
Yeah, it's fake though.
It is fake, and I'm glad you asked. So by itself, it looks creepy. The eyes look like they should be functional in some way, and they're not. They're just marble. Okay. So the other reason is he there may have been some concern that is this some kind of a security device or something.
Right. Is the camera pointing at my pool? I can see that being a legit security question.
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely the head.
And you said don't flatter yourself, bud.
Yeah, and you can't even. I'm sure he knows he probably saw that there's a ring in there, but it's like the back of the owl is to their house, so like you can't see.
It's not a periscope,
right? So I solved this by I glued his head in place as best I could. I kind of doubled it up with a couple pieces of duct tape on the neck. I put a pair of sunglasses on him, and I took one of the helmets that I bought for Larry and put him on him. So you can see a picture up on Instagram. So he's now Officer Boyd is now got his head firmly cemented in place and no longer staring into the neighbor's yard. And we survived.
Yeah, but he's staring at a different neighbor's yard. Now that neighbor's going to have a problem with it.
Well, he's staring at my yard now, so that's fine.
Oh, all right, that's fair.
Cool. Yeah, and the yard over there is Steve, and he's really agreeable to most things. So
yeah, even creepy stuff. Well,
yeah.
All right, we're way over.
Yeah, we're way over time.
Thank
you for that extra. I appreciate the extra few minutes, guys. I appreciate all the time. Thank you, as always, for getting together. I hope that both of you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you on the flip side, all right? Cheers,
all right,
fellas.
take care, everybody.
Take care.
So long.